Yeah, exactly.
Unload.
What you looking, who are you looking for?
Yeah.
Looking for Caitlin.
She's right here.
Okay, hurry
She's
up.
our AD support people.
I'm wondering if
Works
they
good.
tighten that up and,
Yes.
Okay, so let me,
We have Joe and Austin. We need
Yes.
Danielle.
yeah.
what time?
Yeah, it should be it.
Because you said
How many
you
acres you think that is?
so we have more time.
If they can tighten
I
it more, I
haven't
think.
rescheduled it yet, I just need to,
They got a lot of if you bring it out.
I need to get the
they're
10:30
broken,
canceled.
They kind of like overlap.
Okay.
Oh, it does, yeah. it-
All right, good enough. I'm in mitigation, we're gonna get into mitigation meeting and we're gonna discuss it, so I just wanna make sure I have my numbers right. All right, buddy, you take care. You have any problems, call me.
That's really messed up.
Now we know who to yell
All
at.
right, hold on a second. I'm sitting right next door, hold on. You need anything from Ryan? Door?
Yeah, a little bit, sure. I think we're all awake. I don't think we'll go to sleep.
He's in here, he's listening.
I don't have my caffeine yet.
I retract the statement.
Hey, Ryan,
It was a little,
can you stop by City Hall before you leave?
I could definitely nod off myself.
And just ask for El Marine.
But not for caffeine. I just like the kind of ritual of it. I can go 3 days without it, and doesn't. She, I don't have any. My wife will have it. She doesn't have it. I just like. Hey, let's meet for coffee, Ted. Let's have it. I enjoy the ritual.
And Robert, you can hear it. How do you sing on? When you get so many people. Let's look at the other. And this town.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can pull it.
thank you very much. You're welcome.
And it always is like my mom who used to work at a clothing store. I don't always ask her.
Okay.
All this shit.
This is page 3 of 5.
Because it was rubbers even, it was, this was attached.
Oh, got it. The agenda. Okay. I saw that already.
You tell them it's $2. Oh, no, they don't want it. You say $1.99. Oh, yeah.
I don't think it was. It was.
Like a car or something. Always keep it under. Yep. So people go,
Yeah, because I'd always tell them, Mom, it's stupid. Just say $2, $5, $10. She goes, oh, no, you won't believe the people.
it's just like they always said about pennies. It costs us more to make the pennies than it is. Well, why don't we just get rid of it?
They came out and tried it with the $2 bill, but it didn't work.
Adam, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Is Danielle with us yet, Kayla? I don't see her.
Yes, here she is.
Okay, great. You might want to invite Danielle, if you're listening, you can join us if you care to.
This one.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna wait just a minute until Chatham gets back in. He's finishing the call real quick. So good morning, it is 9:03 and it is October the 6th, and we are here for the meeting of the mitigation planning team. I don't see Marcy Jack on the line, but we have received word that Marcy Jack will be acting in Cheryl Hoppel's place as the representative from Beebe. So I don't know why she's not here this morning, but perhaps she has another conflict. We didn't hear anything from her. But we will be looking forward to working with Marcy in the future. And obviously, this team's relationship with Beebe is very important. And I did not receive an update of any activities that Beebe might have planned in terms of emergency training or anything like that, so I really have nothing to report from Beebe at this point. But so we could move then on to the meeting minutes. I know some of you did not receive them. If you'd take a minute and look them over. If you've had a chance to review them, would entertain a motion to approve them unless there are any additions or deletions.
I'll make the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Charlie. Is there a second? Thank you, Rick. We have a motion and a second to approve the mitigation planning meetings from August the 10th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion's approved. Moving then on to item C1, Phragmities control. Chatham, you want to give us a current status report?
All right. So I'm dealing with the hand sprayer as we speak. He had questions. So what we're doing now is hand spraying today, where the aircraft could not get last week. I'd like to report that I budgeted for 150 acres to be sprayed this year, and only 70 needed to be done. We're ahead of the game. So we keep it up, we'll only be doing spot spraying. So the biggest area right now that we need to worry about is the Canary Creek area, because we sprayed that and that's it. So we need to keep an eye on that, especially with the construction going on. I would like to keep a close eye on that area. The area that we burned, there's very little. Where the CH Mason Way is, where it comes up, that's where it's thick there, because we couldn't burn that due to the fact that we were running out of daylight for one, and it was getting green. So with that being green, we just couldn't spray it, or burn it. Today we're spraying. I can give you a list of the areas. The end of Houston Street, there's a large pile there, frag. It surrounds a fire hydrant. You cannot see the fire hydrant, so we are spraying that to kill that. And if the board could cut that in about 3 to 4 weeks, that would be awesome. I don't want it touched right now after they spray it, because the chemicals got to seep into the frag itself. CH Mason Way, where we couldn't burn, along that house, and there's a paper street there. We're spraying that today, and along the houses. Massachusetts Avenue, both sides, that'll be near the wastewater treatment plant and the trailhead, and then in between the houses and Hazard Electric, that area, the aircraft cannot get in that area. East Market Street on both sides, the triangle where Kenny and I could not get the tractor to cut because it is surrounded by water. They're spraying that. I don't know how he's going to get to it, but he's spraying it.
Is that the triangle, is that off of Market Street?
It's on, or yeah, if you go off, it's actually off the first cul-de-sac. Is that Rehoboth or Lewes?
I think that's right.
Off Rehoboth, you can go right there and you can't get to it. We couldn't get the dingo in there nor the bobcat. So we were trying to makeshift a bridge, and the vehicles are just too heavy to get over there.
Okay.
East Market Street, both sides, that's by the Blue Water House, behind the Blue Water House, and along that ditch. Also that the trailhead on American Legion Road. That area we could not get with the helicopter. There's just too many people. So we're going to get in there with his truck and spray. There's an area on New Road that we're doing, on that ditch, and then on Cape Henlopen Drive, and Freeman Highway, if you look to your left, there's a lot of pine trees there. Well, in the middle of that pine trees, there is a large area of frag, so he's gonna go in there and spray, because if we sprayed that, I didn't want to take the chance of it killing the trees. I wanted the chemical to hit the frag itself. So that is being done now, and like I said, if we can just keep it up, we should. Our 5-year plan is turned into a 3-year plan.
That's excellent. So I think you and I had a brief conversation yesterday. I have had some inquiries about the drainage ditch behind the Beacon and all the way up the Daily Market, all the way up to Massachusetts. And I think you indicated to me that was cut for the spring.
Kenny and I cut that, and it's being sprayed today.
Okay, good.
I actually got in the ditch itself
Okay.
and cut it with the muck up to my waist.
Okay. Well, sorry that happened, but
Well, I had.
glad it got cut.
Well, I didn't have a choice, it kind of fell in, so I was in it.
Involuntary.
In your flip-flops?
No, I had boots on, I went in it.
You might still be looking for it if it was in its flip-flops.
It's deep, I sank. I bet you I sank about a foot.
Hey, question for you. When you say 70 out of 150 plan, is that an indication that we're like getting on top of it and it's not coming back? So, but it could come back, but that's good news, good.
That's what I said, I think our 5-year plan has turned into a 3-year plan.
Yeah, okay.
But the only thing, I'm very impatient, and during COVID, we couldn't burn. We just sprayed, and and I think we got 2 to 3 sprays in before we burned, and I think that's what did it.
Okay. That's good.
But he took a picture, he was in the area, he was taking pictures and was calling me. It was kind of fun. He was talking to him while he's flying around in a helicopter. And there's not that much frag where we burned. There's just a little spots here and there. There's grass. He goes, do you want me to spray it anyway? I said, yes, I want you to spray it anyway, just so if something is underneath that grass and it's popping up, we're on top of it. And he goes, okay. So he sprayed everything. And the best part about it, it was on I Love Lewes helicopter spraying for mosquitoes. It was all over I Love Lewes. Oh, look, the city's spraying for mosquitoes.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, yes, yeah, they're spraying for mosquitoes already.
Hey, I want to thank you because it's a monumental challenge, and you've been staying on top of it. The fact that we're getting ahead of it's really, really good.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I know that we did have some pushback from some of the neighbors, especially on the beach, regarding the late notice that they received, or perhaps some of them didn't receive a notice, because you only learned on Sunday night that it was going to be done early Monday morning.
Well, according to everybody else, I've talked to everybody, when it was done, we only had one person call and ask what was going on. The rest, nobody else complained.
Well, just as much advance notice as we can get. I've had a few calls. And the other question, of course, always is, what are we using? And we're using what DENREC authorizes.
Yes. The state of Delaware authorizes.
I had similar calls as well, but once it was explained what we were doing, they were happy.
The only person, first thing I did, I came in the next morning, I said, how many calls did you get here at City? And they said 2, and they were only asking what was going on. And as soon as I told them, they were happy. I said, okay,
That
cool.
was my experience as well.
I was actually talking to her about it, so.
That's right. Okay. Thank you. And this is all hand spraying, so there really is...
Today is hand spraying, yes, and I'm in the midst of texting him now.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you again, Chatham. You've done a lot of work on that, and I know when we started this active control plan that we're working on now, we were quite behind the curve, and it sounds like you've done a great job, and with help of the state in getting this under control, so thank you very much. Okay, I think we can move on to item C2, which is report of Lewes Executive Committee on Resiliency. Khalil, you're participating.
Sure.
Janelle and I are both there. And I think Charlie's been watching as well. Would you like to talk about the committee?
Is this, I'm trying to think if this is, can anyone hear me?
You had it on.
You had it.
Now it's on. Okay, yeah.
Back
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, with regards to the Committee on Resiliency, I don't know exactly what number meeting we're on now, probably 5 or 6. We're meeting twice a month. It's been very enlightening from, I think, most people. It's a broad range of folks. Danielle, who's on the call, has been involved as well. I will defer to the mayor and others, but I think we're on a pretty good path in terms of understanding the challenges of resiliency and learning more where we are today and where we are potentially 5, 10, 20 years from now. And I think that's the challenge. I mean, I think we all are in agreement we need to do certain things to protect our community. However, how urgent is the threat is something that we're continuing to learn about. I continue to be very impressed with the presentations as well as the level of commitment and insight from the various committee members. So I think, this is a 5 or 6 month exercise. I met with a committee member yesterday, for example, and to talk about where we're going, and everyone seems pleased, but no one really knows where we're going to end up because, we're continuing to learn, and we're continuing to assess different things and different threats and different mitigation strategies that may be available to us. But I'm very happy and pleased that we're doing this, and we're getting a lot of community input as well. So I would just encourage everybody who's interested in this, and I think most people should be to some degree, because this is about today and tomorrow in terms of protecting our community. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I think the presentations have been very, very good, and we've had some participation from the community. I think the last presentation in particular, where we looked, where DJ DeCourcy took a look at what's the federal level and what's happening at the state level, was very helpful in understanding the various layers of government that are trying to look at sea level rise and resiliency. And I think that was revealing to some people, because there's things that we can do, but there's also up the chain, there's a lot of things that other agencies, be they state or federal, also have control over or also have input into. So I thought that was particularly helpful. And that particular meeting is online, and there also was a printout sent. So I think everybody has an opportunity to take a look at it. So for me, I think that one, and I know we had some feedback from people who were here that they thought that was revealing. So Charlie, Danielle, and Janelle, would you like to comment?
I really don't have much to add. I think there's a pretty good disparity of opinions on things in the group because it's a wide-ranging group. So, that usually works out to get good solutions that, touch on everybody's interest and input.
I agree with Charlie. I mean, I think right now everybody's just kind of learning, so everybody's on the same playing field. So when we start looking at, potential options, we all kind of have the same information, which is, I think, very helpful.
Good. Danielle, would you care to comment?
No real comments, Mayor. I think I'm really glad that it's going well so far.
Great. So the committee is meeting again next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and it is an open meeting, so anybody who might be listening today, there are 11 members of the community participating, and they come from all aspects of the community, young and old, and various interests. So I think it's a good, broad-range group of people, and I look forward. I think, Janelle, you're making the presentation next Tuesday, is that right?
I am.
So I'm looking forward to that presentation. So there's much work to be done, and as I think Khalil actually mentioned or noted, that there are a variety of opinions. And we asked at the last meeting for people to rate what did they think, and we had everything from people rating it very high to almost not a problem, and across the board. But I think there is a good mid-range there. So anyway, it's good discussion and a very worthwhile project. And I think that I thank the Sea Grant and University of Delaware IPA program for working with us on this. It's a big asset to this community. So then, and there's no further comment on that, I would move then on to the NIMS training update. I know last month we announced that Shelby's now taking over maintaining the records. I don't see her here this morning.
No, I have the information.
Wonderful. Lorraine, could you provide the information?
Sure, so I believe after our last meeting, there needed to be some clarification on why this training was needed. So I believe Anne Marie reached out to Dina, and they are willing to come at a council meeting to explain the importance of getting this training, as far as being able to obtain grants, federal grants, if there were to be a disaster. So, again, after the meeting in August, Shelby sent out notification to staff that needed the training, NIMS training, 1 and 7, 8 and 2, and 3 and 4. And as of the last meeting, we had about 16 that needed 1 and 7, and I'm happy to report that we have only about 5 to 6 that need 1 and 7. For trainings for 800 and 200, there were 5, and there's about 4 that need that training. And then for 300 and 400, 7 to 10 people need that training. So we're hopeful to have the 300 and 400 training done locally and in person. We're hoping to coordinate with somebody to do that. Is that right, Chatham?
I'm waiting for a phone call as of we speak.
Well, great. Thank you very much, and thanks, Shelby, for staying on top of this. I think now that Shelby's with us as the HR person, having this centrally filed will be very helpful. And Chatham, thank you for your pushing us to do this, because it's one of the things that we need to do, but everybody gets busy and it takes time to do it. And some of the training it's not the most scintillating. So
Bring caffeine.
bring caffeine, yeah. And a lot of it is, self-directed, so anyway. All right, so Danielle, you want to talk about RASCL and the RISC 2.0 update, which I found very interesting, by the way. I attended that RASCL coffee, and the FEMA presentation was very interesting. I need to tell you that I did receive my flood insurance bill on the 2nd of October. So when they said it was going to be released in early October, they were serious.
Hopefully it was okay. Not too
Well,
bad.
it didn't quite match what they said it was going to be, but that's okay.
Okay. This will be curious. Yeah, I'll be really curious to see how this plays out and compares to sort of what they're sharing with us. Before we get to risk rating 2.0 that Ted just referred to, in regards to RASCL, there's the annual summit, which is going to be December 7th and 8th. And I do have some information. I'm going to put it also in the chat. We have the first session. So the theme this year is going for the green, funding and designing resilient infrastructure. So focus on sort of our green infrastructure in particular and funding it. So the first session will be on December 7th, tentatively scheduled for 2 o'clock. And it'll be a panel of funders from federal level and state level offering their insights on what makes a grant proposal particularly competitive and selected for funding. So we thought that would be helpful to folks. And then the following day, on Wednesday, December 8th, tentatively at 10:30 a.m., we're going to have a panel on innovative funding mechanisms. So we're still lining up our speakers for that. We're hoping to have an environmental impact bond example and some stormwater utility kind of examples and others. So stay tuned for that. And then in the afternoon that day, on the 8th at 3 o'clock, we're going to do what we traditionally do every annual summit. We'll have a session on local best practices, like local examples around the state. And so we're, pulling panelists for that right now. And then we'll have a networking, half hour immediately following that at 4:30, which is virtual, but we're going to have some giveaways. So hopefully folks will stick around for that. And then I did want to mention, this could be timely too, given the work of the Lewes Executive Committee, that next week on October 13th, Sea Grant and the Delaware Interfaith Power and Light Organization are co-hosting an event on sea level rise with best-selling author John Englander. And so he's an oceanographer that's worked with the Cousteaus, and then he's a sea level rise expert. And a few years ago, he published a best-selling book, High Tide on Main Street, and he has a new book out called Moving to Higher Ground. So we're going to host a conversation with him, and that's at noon on the 13th, and I'm putting both links in the chat right now. So both are free, they're virtual, that's free, they're virtual, and we hope you register for that. And then in regards to risk rating 2.0, yeah, as Ted mentioned, there's, we had a session on that at RASCL, and I can just quickly give you kind of a take on what's all this, hubbub about with risk rating 2.0. It's essentially, it's really rejiggering the whole flood insurance approach that's been in existence since the 70s. And in the past, up until October 1, if you were a house that was in a high-risk flood zone, your insurance rate was basically based on that you were in that flood map zone, and that it was based on your base flood elevation and foundation type, and not much else. And it was all kind of calculated around the 1% annual chance of flooding. And now they're moving that beyond, and they're incorporating a lot more factors into it, because they felt like there wasn't an equitable approach there, because you could be in the AE flood zone, and then your neighbor could be too. They might be 3 blocks away from the water source, and you're right at the water source edge, but yet your rates would be similar. So they're taking an approach where not only are they using FEMA source data, but they're also combining data from other sources in the federal government, disaster models, commercially available third-party insurance models, and things like that. They're now factoring in the cost to rebuild the home if it's destroyed or flooded, and then they're factoring in things like the distance to your water source, the type of flooding you might be more susceptible to. It could be tidal, it could be your heavy rainfall events. They're still looking at elevation, but more, less about base flood elevation, more about just your ground elevation at first floor height, and then the foundation type. And they're going to incorporate additional flood frequencies into that. So all of that comes out in the mix, and kind of defines your new insurance rate. I will say that where you are in the floodplain and your base flood elevation still matter in terms of whether you have to carry flood insurance if you have a federally backed mortgage. So the firm, the flood map is still relevant for those purposes and for floodplain management, but then these variables will go into play in terms of setting your actual insurance rate. In terms of what it could mean for Delaware, this is all FEMA data. They're basically estimating that out of all the policies that are in existence in Delaware, about 52% will see an increase of about $10 per month. And then 8% of policyholders will see an increase of between $10 and $20 per month. And then 2% might see $20 per month or more, and then the rest would be decreases. Now, I think that from what I read into, I would say that you're more likely to see an increase if the cost to rebuild your home is higher than average. You're potentially going to see a decrease if the cost to rebuild is lower than average. If you're closer to a water source, that could factor. So there's different things that, could factor into here. So now that this policy has started, I think I would be really curious to hear from folks what they're seeing in their insurance premiums. We're told that they are capped. You can't, if you are going to have an increase, it's not going to increase by more than, I think, 15% a year until they scale you up. And I'm always being told by FEMA that everyone was seeing increases anyway under the old system, but this system will actually cap you once you get to your, I guess, your true risk rating or your true risk rate. So October 1st is when it went into effect, and it does have a sliding scale. I think that's for new policyholders, and then April, I'm trying to remember, actually I'd have to confirm that. I think there is an April start date for certain policies.
Correct.
So
One question that's been asked of me is, that we, because of our CRS rating, we should be enjoying a 10% decrease in the flood insurance rate. Is that automatically calculated into it when you get the policy, or does that need to be requested?
Oh, good. That's a good question. From everything I've heard and read, CRS continues and is absorbed, by this new change in the policy, but I haven't asked whether the municipality has to ask for that to be factored. I had assumed it just automatically gets transferred. So I don't know. Have you seen that? Well, I guess it's just started, so we don't know yet.
What I've seen is no reflection on any policy that recognizes CRS rating of the community. So I'm just curious if that's something that has to be requested to be reflected into the policy. That would make a difference for some people.
Yeah, let me try to look into that. They're certainly saying publicly that CRS,
Right.
the discounts continue under the new policy.
That was my
So-
understanding from your coffee, that it was going to continue, but,
Yeah.
I just didn't know how that gets factored. Do you know about, Janelle?
No, but Brent just said it should be automatic.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
And CRS stands for the Community Rating System. So Lewes adopts into that program, and it provides insurance discounts for all policyholders within the city of Lewes because the city participates, and it takes actions to help mitigate flooding and improve resilience of the community. And in exchange, the city's insurance holders get a discount. Someone asked that in the questions.
I just think for education of the consumer, it would be helpful if it was noted on the policy that the municipal CRS rating is reflected in this premium that you're receiving notice for.
If it's like what you said, Mayor, that there's no description whatsoever about it, it could go either way. It's either in there or automatically taken out. We don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you don't know.
Yeah.
So I think either way it would be helpful to find out whether or not it's included.
Everything that I've seen, I was just on another presentation that FEMA has specifically for folks in my field doing extension work, and they said CRS is included.
Okay, well, if it's included, if that's what they said, perhaps it is already reflected in the policy. The fact that there's no noting on the policy is what raised the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. It was a very good presentation last week, thank you. That was timely and certainly, because I think we've all heard that, rates are going to go crazy, et cetera, and I think the 15% cap is useful information that a lot of people weren't considering. And so all of that was very helpful information, and it was contained, your coffee hour was really valuable. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'm glad that helped. If you see things in the media that quotes First Street Foundation, I would just advise to take some of that information with a grain of salt, because it's based on models that aren't being used by FEMA, and so we just have to be careful about what's being shared publicly.
Okay, well, Danielle, looks like the item next on the agenda is the equitable planning for local adaptation needs. You want to talk about that too?
Yes, and I'm actually delighted to be joined by two colleagues from the University of Delaware, Julia O'Hanlon and Nicole Minnie. And we're gonna, if it's okay, we'd like to share a screen. What we're wanting to do is preview a tool that we're developing. So this grew out of some of our research interests. My interest in emergency preparedness for older adults, and Julia and Nicole have partnered often on aging in place. And certainly, Sussex County, we have a very large growing population of older adults, and certainly in Lewes, right?
Right.
There's more than half of the population are 60 and over. So what this tool is trying to do is take a lot of different information sources and put it in one place to support planning and decision-making in regards to this population, so that their needs are factored in, because this population is disproportionately impacted by disasters, and certainly they have a desired age in place. And so thinking it holistically about the needs of this group as they age into that bracket is really important. And so is it okay if Nicole tries to share her screen?
Sure. I think Kayla's working on it right now, right, Kayla?
Yeah.
Yep.
You should be able to share now.
Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to give you like a 10-minute overview of it and just ask your feedback. What we're trying to see is, a lot of this information would be pertinent to Sussex County, to service organizations within the county that support this population. And we're hoping it'll be helpful to municipalities too, whether you're planning for emergencies or other needs in the community. And so we really just are looking for some feedback. So we're going to give you a quick overview, and I'm going to turn it over to Nicole and Julia to kick us off.
Great, thank you very much. We've dimmed the lights, so we're a little darker, but we're not taking naps.
Okay.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to share this tool, and we're really excited to hear some feedback. I'm just going to give a quick 2-minute overview of the site and then turn it over to Julia, and then give you a little more information after Julia too. So this is the hub site, and it's basically divided into 3 sections: aging in place, hazards, and connectivity. When you click on aging in place, it's going to open up to this page, and then it's again subdivided into 2 more categories: health and wellness and transportation. Each page offers some demographic information as well as some interactive maps that are you're able to navigate through and get some additional information on. So let me just go into health and wellness. So we have a map gallery of all different kinds of information, such as disability, food resources, adults diagnosed with COPD, and so on, as well as the social vulnerability index and additional resources. Under transportation, we have some additional information as well, some statistics from the Ready or Not workshop in 2018, as well as some transportation type information as well, and our DART information too. Going into hazards, let me go back to the top. We have some climate information that is available to everyone, as well as, again, some mapping information that DEMA thought was very relative to have on the site, such as housing units that were built in 1939 or before, as well as some people living in poverty, the shelter information, and I'll provide more on the dashboard later. And then speaking of connectivity, we wanted to include such information such as percent of households with any type of computer or an internet access. And as the new census information comes out, I plan to be updating these sites, or these maps rather. I also included the Internet Access Index overview, which provides a little more information nationwide, so you can compare Lewes to that, as well as the 2020 Census Demographic Data Viewer. Census has put this together to help provide information as a quick snapshot as some of their 2020 data is coming out, so I want to include that as well. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Julia.
Thanks, Nicole. Can everybody hear me okay? Just a thumbs up? Okay, thank you.
We're good. Thank you, Julia.
I just wanted to reiterate the thank you for having the floor for a couple of minutes with the committee today to just briefly showcase what we're working on. As Danielle mentioned, this is sort of a work in progress, but we see this tool as an opportunity for this committee and other leaders in all communities in Sussex County and hopefully statewide longer term as an opportunity to educate yourselves as well as your community members about some of the risks that certain populations might be more vulnerable to and why that's important to think about. And I think also this could help support any efforts that may, in terms of funding that could be available to support mitigation efforts or other plans that are happening in the various communities. We wanted to just take a couple minutes to provide some examples of how one could use this. So I was just going to talk and ask Nicole to maybe go to the demographics section. Scroll down, there we go. Just gives an overview of Sussex County's population. As Danielle has already alluded to, we know that we have an increasing older adult population, particularly in Sussex and in Lewes as well, with over 50% of the population being 65 and older. One of the things, is there a way, Nicole, you can go to the dashboard to kind of show like the darker shades? Can we zone in on Lewes a little bit? Here we go. So this, and Nicole's going to go into a little bit more detail about this because she's the technical guru here. But in order to use the dashboard, you can click on these various maps and you can actually zone into your particular community and look at various characteristics that we've identified are important for this population and in terms of risks. So one of the things in demographics, you can kind of hone in and see, darker shades represent areas with higher concentrations of older adults. And again, no surprise that in Lewes, you can see that. One of the other things that we thought was important with this is the group of up and coming volunteers in the community, as well as those who might need to start thinking about services for older adults in the next 10, 20 years. So that age category, 45 and older, which was pointed out to us by Jackie Sullivan and the Village Volunteers. So when they're thinking about their planning efforts and who's going to be volunteering and then also needing services in years to come, we can also see that in addition to the 65 and older population, it's kind of important to be thinking about those folks who are in that middle age category now and what that would look like for the community going forward in terms of, adaptation needs and in terms of risks. Another thing that we've included here is Nicole mentioned the folks who might have any health issues, including COPD and other disabilities, as these individuals are likely to be at a much higher risk and having very specific needs and issues when it comes to sheltering in place and or evacuating, as well as accessing prescriptions. So, you can see too in Lewes, there's a relatively high concentration of people, for example, with COPD compared to other areas of the state. So those are just a few examples related to demographics and some of the other characteristics we have included. So Nicole, I was going to turn it back over to you to get a little bit more technical.
Sure. So the dashboard can be found on the hazards tab. I'm just going to have it open here to make it a little bit easier for me to navigate. So I just wanted to show you how to use the tool. You can click on the search and just type in an address or type in a location. And all the maps will zoom to that location. And you can turn data off and on. You can click on the legend. So I'm going to turn off the 65 and older population. And then you can see the found data located here.
That's the flood zones.
Right.
Yep.
And then within these 4 different categories that we decided to include, you can click right on the map to see the percentage of the adults that were ever diagnosed with COPD, or that have a disability, that have been diagnosed with diabetes. Oops, I'm trying to move my screen around. Sorry. Or the percent housed in units with no vehicle. I can move this out of the way.
And the idea behind this is that if you're thinking about like emergency management, you know, you might select different layers and combine them. So looking at where the flood vulnerability is, combined with the housing units without a vehicle, you know, that could assist with evacuation planning, or looking at the adults that have disabilities. So kind of looking at these different data sets together kind of gives a more rounded picture.
Another thing that you can do is just choose a community. So for now, we just, oops, sorry. Oops. There we go. I'm going to choose Harborview. And it'll go zoom into that particular community and turn on the 2017 aerial photography. And again, you can click within the map and get the same type of information on each of these different categories. The maps, again, have additional information such as hospitals, assisted living, nursing homes, dialysis, the pharmacies, the communities, and the municipalities. Just see if you can reset the map just by clicking on reset, and it'll go back to the state level. Some of the additional information we include on the map to the left here are the shelters, as well as I tried to map out the 55 and older communities, and I'm sure this is going to continue to grow, but this is what we have had from the last couple of years, are the sites that are located here. And if you click on the legend, you'll see the age-restricted communities are in these old circular symbols. And that's what I have. Oh, one other thing I just want to show is if you choose a community, let's go back to Harborview. Another thing you can do is expand any of the maps to just take up the whole screen if you needed to, and then collapse it back. That's the other thing I wanted to show. Do you have any questions?
Very impressive tool.
Thank you.
A lot of information. Go ahead. Well, I think that, you know, for future planning for like the Lewes Fire Department and EMS services, this information is really valuable in terms of what's the population looking like and what's the percentage of people who are handicapped or who have handicapping conditions. You know, it's amazingly valuable, I think, if you look at it. Obviously, you've given us a quick overview. It sounds like the multiple layers and the fact that you can get down to such community-based levels is really interesting. Anybody else care to comment?
Yeah, I have a quick comment and question. I agree with Ted. This is a pretty comprehensive tool for a lot of people. Is there a plan, strategy in terms of outreach to Lewes and Sussex County in general to educate people about this tool? Sometimes, you know, things like this get buried or aren't, you know, they're considered too complex for most people, but I'd be curious to see how you're viewing your outreach efforts.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We're still in the development of this tool, and this meeting's really helpful feedback for us so we can refine the tool and see where the weak spots are. In fact, if you want to play around, Nicole has just put the tool in the chat, and we welcome, you know, in your off hours if you want to send us feedback. We do plan to do outreach starting in this winter. And we would love to, you know, strategize about how best to reach out to your community as well as the other communities in Sussex. We have some ideas, but certainly welcome the feedback. I think outreach is going to be really important. We're kind of aiming this toward the planning level, like municipal service organizations, county planning level. It doesn't mean that individuals couldn't use it, residents couldn't look at it. It certainly has that kind of information too, but we're targeting as our audience sort of the decision makers and planning folks.
Well,
Actually, Nicole, could you bring up the National Risk Index real quick? I just wanted to show you one other thing really quick. One of the other ways we see that this tool could be helpful is if you're applying for grants, you can use this data to show the need, you know, and to package this in such a way, you know, that helps. You can put data and visuals with the grant proposal. I just wanted to show you that under the hazards tab of this site, we're showing the FEMA National Risk Index. So if you click on the map and then you zero into Lewes, this is something that was developed by FEMA, not us, but it basically consolidates information related to annual loss data. So it's looking at historical events up until I think 2017 it goes to, and where the loss has been, the damages have been. It looks at social vulnerability according to the CDC index, and then community resilience according to a number of factors, and it compares the county at the county level. Nicole, could you go to census tract view? You could select county level or census tract view, and it compares you to others in the nation. So you can see here in Delaware that there is more moderate risk overall along the coast, which is not too surprising. If you zoom into Lewes, which is by the Cape Henlopen Park there, and just click on that, it will generate a score. This is FEMA's tool, and it's not perfect, I will say, but it gives you something to work with. Here it's showing that Lewes has a relatively moderate risk relative to others in the nation. And if you scroll down, Nicole, it's showing you under what factors. It's looking at something like 18 different hazards. And you can see that for coastal flooding, we're relatively high. And for, earthquake, we're low, and we don't have much, under hail or drought. You can see which hazards, they're capturing for Lewes that seem relevant. And they do normalize the data across, the different states to try to make it apples to apples as possible. But if you keep going down, it gives you more information. You can see how the actual index, the risk rating, is calculated. Community resilience, a higher score lowers your risk index rating, whereas the other two, elevate it. And for Lewes, if you were to click on the community resilience tab, which is on the upper left, Nicole, of the screen, I think that's going to show that Lewes has a decent resiliency rating as according to this tool. And it looks at things like institutional capabilities and, presence of, EMTs and things like that. So I just wanted to point this out, too, as another feature, because, again, I think this could be helpful for applying for grants in particular.
As you think about, working and getting this word out about this program, I think somehow getting in front of SCAT would be really, really helpful, because I think the county-wide interest in this will be phenomenal. And so I would encourage you to, get on the SCAT schedule and make a presentation and, at the level that you're doing here today, so at least you pique people's interest and they know it's out there and they can begin to work with it. If you need any help getting on that, I'd be more than happy to help.
Yeah, we probably would. We would appreciate the help on that.
There is a SCAT steering committee. Actually, there's a SCAT dinner tonight, which because of other commitments we have, we're not going to be able to go to, but there is a SCAT steering committee on Friday. So I can make mention of it there. But it is something I think would be very, very much of interest, not only to municipals, but also to the county. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we certainly probably will be most ready to do the formal outreach probably, I'm looking at Julia, maybe December timeframe, maybe January.
Yeah.
But we would really welcome that. And And I will say that you'll see as you play around the tools, some of the data, we're working with available data. So some of it is at census block level, and you can zoom in. Others is a little bit more like, macro level. So that's just some of the things we're working around, that we're just taking what's available. Some of the data is reflecting, earlier years like 2014 to 2019, and then we're getting the new census data, and Nicole's updating it as time goes on. So this is kind of a living, document, and we'll continue to refine it. And then if it really takes off, the hope is that we broaden this to the whole state, and then potentially down the road even include other types of vulnerable populations into this.
Well, having worked with both Nicole and Julia before, I know the thoroughness of their work, so this is really a wonderful program. Thank you very much for your work on it, and it's really, I think, a great opportunity. I'm kind of monopolizing the conversation here, but anybody else care to comment?
I would only suggest also that your outreach include Beebe Hospital, in particular their population health folks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, thank you. Yep, we started talking with them. We'll continue that. Appreciate it.
Well, and that goes for not only Beebe, but all the other hospitals in the area.
Bay Health and, well,
Actually, this also,
Christiana too.
Well, yes, now that they're especially in the area. The other opportunity that you might want to consider with this kind of thing is taking it to the Healthcare Commission for a presentation. Julia, you know that commission well, and I think this information would be appropriate at a statewide planning level for DHSS. I mean, what are your comments on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. In terms of the hospital systems, I think even, being able to have a uniform set of data or information statewide that would support individual hospital systems' community needs assessments, I think that's one opportunity to support them, and we definitely will continue to reach out to all of the systems. But I agree. I think that, just based on my experience with the Health Resources Board, some of this information and the commission as a whole, it would be, very, helpful, and I think we would get additional feedback from them as well.
Yeah.
Did you mention the Department of Health?
I beg your pardon?
Department of Health.
That's what I meant, DHSS, yeah. Right. Yeah, I think, in terms of you having worked together on the Health Resources Board, I think in terms of long-term planning for nursing home and assisted living facilities, this is really helpful information. So, great tool that you're developing. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the time.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda obviously is an update from Beebe, which unfortunately we don't have this morning, and I don't think Marcy's joined us, at least, would you check, Kayla? I don't think she's joined us. Yeah, okay. So then moving on to tabletop exercise. Chatham, you talked about our need to do that. You want to talk further about that?
There's some things that I think we need to do before the tabletop. Looking back at our notes from the previous tabletop, there was things that we need to do as a group, as a city, to update our plan, and that needs to be done before we do our own tabletop.
Okay.
There were some things that we could get done quickly, and neglecting them is not a good idea. So I think we need to get that started and working on some of those small things and getting them taken care of, and then we can start looking at reaching back out to the Tolson group, which I found all the information the other night when I was working night work, and we can start seeing if we can tailor down the tabletop we had before to just the city employees and council members, especially since we have all new council members, and go on what Alan Rain suggested and do it just for us.
Okay.
That would also include the fire department, just so they could be in the group as well.
And Beebe.
And Beebe. They're the only two that I suggest we bring in. The rest of everything else can work. We can work around. So that's where I believe we need to start. And
So let's talk about updating the plan. Is that something that should be done by this whole committee, or should we have a subcommittee to work on that and bring it back to this committee? What's your...
There should be like 2 or 3 of us so we can sit down and go through that plan, make the suggestions that were brought up, fix them, and bring it back.
Okay.
There's some small things that IOUs need to be done, the command center stuff that needs to be done. That needs to be done before we do do a tabletop.
Okay.
Because we need to know the ins and outs of that place and make sure it's going to be capable of, which we do know, but we need to have it on paper.
Okay. So we need to develop a subcommittee to work on those updates.
Work on those updates.
Okay.
Do we have to budget for that?
A budget for that?
Not to do the updates, no, but the tabletop, we may have to do something for bringing in the Tulsa group.
Yeah, we'll have to budget any activity that we do as a tabletop, I think, but doing the update, I think there's a budget for it.
It's just a couple of keystrokes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, obviously, you need to be part of that. And Janelle, do you want to be part of that subcommittee?
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All
Sorry.
right. Anyone else want to volunteer to work on that subcommittee?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Janelle, excuse me, LRA. My brain is not engaged here this morning. Anyways,
Ask Olson.
and Austin, I think probably, can you join us on that? Yeah, I'll participate as well. So I think that's enough to get started.
Yes.
Robin, we may be getting to you with specific questions relating to, and Rick, relating to your departments. Okay.
One thing we can start by doing in your department, Rick, is getting a list of every piece of equipment you have.
Probably already have that inventory.
Make
Right.
sure that inventory is updated. We're going to need that, and then we'll need it from Austin's group too. I'm sure it's been updated, but having it with the plan itself is one of the biggest things.
Okay. Yeah, those are where you need to go. Okay. So, yeah, I think you're welcome to participate. It might be a good idea.
Okay.
So, looking ahead to doing that, do we want to float a couple of dates amongst those of us that are going to do this over the next day or two? All right. Who's going to take the lead on doing that? Would you do that, Elaine? Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So then maybe we can bring something back to this committee when we have our next meeting.
I think the majority of the small things we can get done amongst ourselves and bring it back to the committee and have it ready to go.
Okay.
There's going to be some big things that we need to look at and hash out. With all of our minds together, I think that could happen.
Okay.
And we can go on. I mean, there's if I remember correctly, I think there's about 20 things that they suggested. And one of the things that we really need to think about now is that we did the reentry program. Within that reentry program, we decided to go with this program that allowed us to have our own ticket system of bringing people in and out. Well, since the federal government had with coronavirus and all that stuff, all that funding went away without those people. This is something else that we need to look at, having a reentry program. Personally, I think if we have we got a lot of the new girls here, I think something can happen. We could do it on our own. It's going to be a challenge, but I think we could do it.
Okay.
But that's something we need to think about, and I'll throw that right out there right now. Those people are not available anymore.
Yeah, that was a good program. We were ready to go with it, and then it all got derailed.
So if we can take that aspect of that program and take it and confine it to the city of Lewes, and what we already did, but having some of our people involved, that may help the...
Okay. All right. So, given the fact that we need to bring this back to the committee, is it realistic that we can have a meeting in December, our regular meeting, and that this subcommittee could work on it between now and then? I know we've got a very full plate already. Janelle, I'm looking at you.
If it's something smaller, I think we can definitely get that. I'm crazy busy, but I think I think between the group, we can get a couple meetings in between now and December to
Okay.
address the
So
concerns.
I'm working tonight. Let me get the list out. I'll make copies of everything.
Perfect.
And I'll put a copy on everybody's desk. And
That would be very, that would be
now
very
we can go through and say, okay, you can handle this, can you handle that, or we need to handle it as a group.
Okay,
All right?
excellent.
And the question, does it need to be a subcommittee since it's primarily just staff?
I think it's primarily staff.
So I think it's just staff getting together.
Yeah.
So it's not a formal subcommittee, it's
No.
just staff working on updating the plan.
Right. Okay. With that in mind, if we're going to try to shoot for bringing something back, we normally would meet in December. And using 2 months from today, it looks like it would be the morning of the 8th of December.
I will not be here.
You will not be here. Well, we need you here. You're already out, you're on vacation? Well deserved. So when are you back? January?
I'll be back the 20th, the week of Christmas.
The
I'm taking 2 weeks off.
Oh, my goodness.
That's also the day of the RASCL Summit.
Yeah.
Well, the
8th is RASCL.
The 7th and 8th are the RASCL Summit, yeah. So
Can we do something earlier, like
you want to try to do something the week of, the week prior?
The week prior?
Yeah, I'll be,
Okay, so then we would be meeting on December 1st or December 2nd, Thursday?
First, second, third? Third's a Friday.
Third's a Friday. I think that will probably be a little chaotic, given all the Christmas stuff that goes on now.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I would suggest we either shoot for the 1st or 2nd of December. Preference?
I don't have a preference at this time, no.
First.
Ted, I know that there's an ACT meeting
On-
on
that's a second.
the 2nd at 1.
Exactly, I've got it on my calendar.
Okay.
If we meet at 9, it shouldn't interfere. Then we'll do it on the 1st at 9. Does that work for everybody? Joe, does that work for you?
I'll be flying to Iceland on the 1st.
Yeah, I'll be on vacation too, but don't hold it up just for me.
Okay. All right, so 9 o'clock?
Ted,
Yes.
the Delaware American Planning Association conference is that day, so I'm thinking Janelle and I probably need to be at that.
Okay, so then we're back to this. Then we're back to the 2nd. I didn't see you were on, Anne Marie. So let's go with the 2nd at 9 o'clock, if that works. Joe will be off the plane, and you'll be through.
I'll still be here.
Okay, so, all right, so we're going to try that. I think after that, if we can't do it that week, with your being gone for 2 weeks, then we need to move it to January, because people will be.
You know, and then I think that gives us ample time for several staff meetings.
Okay.
To address. the
Okay.
concerns.
All right, so that's good. Is there anything else to bring forward here today? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Great.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for being here. Very productive meeting. Danielle, thank you for all your update. And of course, the information about the equitable planning. I think that's a really great, potentially a really great resource for a lot of us, the entire county.
Glad. Thanks so much. Have
Yeah.
a great day, guys.
Yep, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Meeting adjourned.
When is the Lewes Christmas parade? Which,
The 4th.
it is the 4th?
Yep.
Okay. That's what's thought.
Hospitality night is the 2nd.